After studying abroad in Asia, I realized every country has a completely different public transportation system. Some were insanely clean, some were super confusing, and one of them literally trapped me behind the payment gates. So today, I'm ranking every public transportation system I used in Asia. I traveled to Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Thailand, and Malaysia. Although I never actually used public transportation in Malaysia, so unfortunately they are disqualified from the rankings. Also, these are completely based on my personal experiences, so if you disagree, let me know in the comments. Alright, let's get into it. Starting off strong with Singapore. Singapore honestly had the cleanest transportation system I have ever seen in my life. Like, genuinely spotless. I don't know how they keep everything that clean. The MRT system was also probably the easiest to understand overall. It was pretty straightforward in which direction each train takes you, and there are plenty of signs to help you find the interchange platforms. I do think that during rush hour it's hard to find a seat, let alone something to hang on to while the train tosses and turns. There was one time I was holding on to nothing for dear life as I tried to balance my way through at least 12 stops. The bus system was also pretty self-explanatory, and there weren't really any difficulties that I faced. The cleanliness, I would give a 10 out of 10, cleanest transportation system I've ever seen. User-friendly, 8 out of 10. It may be a bit confusing choosing the direction of the train, but it's very easily learned. Reliability and punctuality, 10 out of 10. The trains arrived right as it says it will, with another train coming in like 3 minutes later. Comfort, I would give 7 out of 10. When it's not rush hour, I would say it's decently comfortable, but the seats are not always the most comfortable. So overall, Singapore gets 8.75 out of 10. Hong Kong's transportation system was honestly really cool. You can use the octopus card basically everywhere. Trains, buses, ferries, trams, even some stores. The station and interiors are pretty similar to those of other places in terms of cleanliness and comfort. There were times I got confused about where to go within the station since each station was pretty big and had multiple areas. One thing I loved though was the station signs. Every station has its own unique color and design, and I started taking photos of every single one like I was collecting Pokemon cards. Hong Kong also gets bonus points for having some of the coolest forms of transportation overall, such as ferries, cable cars, and trams. The trams are one of my favorites to ride because if you get a window seat, it's such a nice way to see the area without having to walk around in the heat. For cleanliness, I would give it a 9 out of 10. The MTRs and buses were pretty clean, but the trams and ferries were a bit different. For user-friendly, I would give a 7 out of 10. Besides the large size of the stations, it was pretty easy to navigate. They also have signs outside the MTR showing where each station is, so you can easily find it outside. Reliability and punctuality, a 10 out of 10. It was pretty punctual with multiple trains coming right after one another, just like Singapore. Comfort level was, I'd say, a 7 out of 10. It was pretty decent, but there wasn't anything special about its comfortability. Overall, I would give it an 8.25 out of 10. And then we have Japan, the transportation system that humbled me. Japan's train system was by far the most confusing system I used. There are multiple train companies, multiple train types, and sometimes completely different trains arrive on the same exact platform. The first few days, I genuinely had no idea what was happening. We accidentally got on the wrong trains multiple times because I wasn't used to rapid trains versus local trains versus limited express trains, and all of that using the same platform. There was also one moment where we entered through the wrong payment gate, realized we were in the wrong place, tried to leave immediately, and then basically got trapped because the gate wouldn't let us back out. I was standing there like, well, I guess I live here now. There were also times when we couldn't figure out whether we needed a physical ticket or just a Suica card. And whenever we did use physical tickets, I kept panicking because the machine would randomly give the ticket back halfway through the trip. Like, why are you giving it back to me? Am I done with it or not? But honestly, after a while, I started appreciating how insanely efficient the system actually is. The trains were unbelievably punctual. Like if it says 203, it means 203. Not 204, not 205, exactly 203. And some of the long distance trains had surprisingly comfortable seating too. However, I think some areas of the train station were not as clean as I expected. Everyone raved about how clean Japan is and its train stations are, but some of the train stations I went to were pretty much like any regular train station with some trash and dirt around. But I would say it definitely is cleaner than like the New York subway system. I would rate cleanliness a 7 out of 10. It was decently clean. User friendly, I would say a 4 out of 10. I was high key very confused. Reliability and punctuality, a 10 out of 10. The train arrived right on the dot. Comfort, I would say 8 out of 10. I liked the chairs and the seating. So overall, I would rate it a 7.25 out of 10, mostly because I was fighting for my life trying to understand it. Taiwan's MRT was super clean, simple, and easy to use overall. You can use the Easy Card for most transportation, which made things pretty convenient. But fun story, when I was traveling from the airport to a hotel through the train system, you can buy either a physical ticket, used Apple Pay, or bought a transportation card at the MRT help desk. I tried to use Apple Pay, but it wouldn't work for some reason, even though the payment gate said it should work. So I ended up buying a 72-hour transportation card from the help desk, only to realize that the airport MRT system is not connected to the city MRT system. So I had to pay for two different cards. If you intend to leave the airport and come back through MRT, I would say it's all good to get a transportation card at the airport. But if not, like me, I would just take an Uber and then buy a transportation card in the city. I didn't end up coming back to the airport via the MRT, so now I have an airport MRT card with just one more trip left. The stations themselves were pretty easy to navigate, although some of the transfer walks were pretty long. So for cleanliness, I would rate that a 9 out of 10. User friendly, I would say 8 out of 10. Reliability, punctuality, I would say 10 out of 10. Comfort, I would say 8 out of 10. So overall, Taiwan gets 8.75 out of 10. In South Korea, you mainly use a T-money card for transportation, which you can buy at convenience stores and reload at stations. The subway system itself was modern and easy to use most of the time. But one thing that kept confusing me was that some stations had completely separate entrances and gate areas depending on the platform or direction you were going. So multiple times I confidently entered the platform only to realize I picked the wrong direction and had to awkwardly leave and go back around. All other countries I have been to only require one swipe in, and then you have access to both directions on the platform. The bus system was pretty nice. You just pay with the same T-money card at the front and press the stop button when you want to get off. In some cases, there were some high-tech bus stops. The bus stop was like a little AC/heated room with a big TV screen showing bus times. It had phone chargers and seats to wait in as you wait for your bus. Meanwhile, I'm standing there wondering why my hometown bus stops don't even have benches. For cleanliness, I would rate a 7 out of 10. It was pretty clean, but not as clean as other countries. User-friendly, I would say 7 out of 10. Reliability and punctuality, I would say 9 out of 10. The trains were pretty much on time. Comfort, I would say 8 out of 10. It was pretty decent and similar to other transports. So overall, I would say 7.75 out of 10. This transportation system definitely felt less connected compared to the other countries. I used the BTS SkyTrain, which run above the city. The main difference between this system and the ones in other countries was that I had to pay for temporary cards and tokens at a kiosk. I paid for a single journey card and had to choose my destination in advance. Then I would tap this card at the payment gate and insert it into the payment gate at my destination. I believe they are now implementing a more up-to-date system where you can just tap to pay with your credit or debit card or prepaid card. The stations were pretty decent and the trains themselves were similar to those in other countries. For cleanliness, I would say 7 out of 10. User-friendly, I would say 5 out of 10 because I actually had a friend who helped me with the kiosk because she went to Thailand before. So if I were here myself, I think it would have taken me a while to figure out how to use it. Reliability and punctuality, I would say 9 out of 10. The trains were on time if I remember correctly. For comfort, I would say 8 out of 10. It was pretty decent. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Overall, I would give it a 7.25 out of 10. So here's my final ranking. We have at number 1, Singapore, number 2, Taiwan, number 3, Hong Kong, number 4, South Korea, and tied for 5th place, Thailand and Japan. Now, before the comments attack me for putting Japan last, I actually think Japan's system is amazing. My brain just could not process it in the short amount of time I was there. If I'd lived there longer, the ranking probably would have been completely different. But as a first-time visitor, the system absolutely humbled me. Let me know your rankings in the comments and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming videos like the ones where I rate all the airlines I took during my study abroad. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.